When the First Man Came, the second piece of God's purple puzzle tree.
A long, long time ago, on a very sunny day, God sat upon the ground and looked at all he made. For a long, long time, he looked and looked. He looked at the ants, and he looked at the snails, and the clumsy kangaroos with very funny tails, at the purple fish, and the old black crows, and the camels with a hump, and the happy hippopotamus, who has very muddy feet that make a funny sound like
Bump, schlurf, thump, schlurf, bump.
God sat on the ground for a long, long time. He frowned, and he looked, and he looked, and he frowned, for he couldn't seem to find someone to laugh and talk with, to sing and play and walk with, and to tell the real good news he still had on his mind. He listened to the waters that were green and blue and purple, but they couldn't say a thing except
Chirple, chirple, chirple.
And that isn't saying much, now is it? So God put his ear down to the ground, and he listened to the land, and he listened to the tree, but they only make a sound like when it's very late at night, and that isn't saying much, now is it? So God listened to the animals and everything he made, to the swish of the fish and the tail of the snail sliding over a bump, and the happy hippopotamus who has very dirty feet that make a funny sound like
Bump, schlurf, thump, schlurf, bump.
But that isn't saying much, now is it? God sat on the ground for a long, long time, for he hadn't really found someone to laugh and talk with, to sing and play and walk with, and tell the real good news he still had on his mind. God sat on the ground and looked and frowned on a very sunny day. God sat on the ground and held in his hand a lump of dirt and a lump of clay. And strange to say, the clay was almost red. So God squashed and squeezed and squoogled it until he made a head. God sat on the ground and held in his hand another lump of clay. And strange to say, he used no paste or glue, but he squashed and squeezed and squoogled it and made a boy like you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Now the boy's name was Adam, the old word for brown or red, the color of the clay, you see, that God had used to make the first red man. And if you cut your finger, you'll see quite probably that you are just as red inside as he. God took that boy called Adam, the first red man there was, and he held him very close, for he loved him very much. God opened Adam's mouth and blew and blew and blew until that boy was breathing just the way we do. God laughed with him and talked with him. He sang with him and walked with him, for he loved him very much. Now God was king of all the world, for God was God, you see, and Adam was the prince he made to rule that world for him and care for all the animals, like lots and lots of pets. So Adam gave them all a name, the frog and the dog and the ant and the snail and the clumsy kangaroo with a very funny tail and the purple fish and the old black crow and the camel with a hump and the happy hippopotamus who has very dirty feet that make a funny sound like
Bump, schlurf, thump, schlurf, bump.
But Adam needed someone special to make him really happy. He needed someone extra special to help him do his best. Adam needed someone to be a princess at his side to help him rule the world for God. For God was king, you see, and the world was very wide. Adam fell asleep one day, and he dreamed of someone special. He dreamed God took one rib away and made a lovely girl, bright and fresh and new, like a very pretty butterfly just out of its cocoon. And soon he woke up from his dream, and the dream was really true. A girl was there, a very pretty girl, a princess just for him. Adam called his princess Eve, for she would live with him each day and play with him from morn till eve. And she would give him children to help him rule the world the way God told them to. Adam and Eve were happy, and God was happy too, for he had someone to laugh with, and he had someone to talk with, he had someone to play with, and he had someone to walk with, just the way we do.
Tiger, tiger, tell me, do you fly? Do you slink around the ground or soar about the sky? God made tigers, God made you and me to fit together piece by piece in this purple puzzle tree. God had a puzzle plan of just how things would be.